Today's reading both come from Paul's second letter to the Corinthians. But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show us that all this surpassing power is from God and not from us. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not abandoned. Struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body. For we who are alive are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that his life may also be revealed in our mortal body. So then, death is at work in us, but life is at work in you. Therefore, in order to keep me from being conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me, but he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I'm weak, then I'm strong." This is the word of the Lord. You may be seated.
Amen. Good morning, everybody. It's good to see you. Come on, 11:30. You got to be a little more alive than that. Let's try this. Good afternoon, everybody. Hey, it's good to be together. My name's Jared. I'm one of the pastors here. Let's give a big shout out. Welcome to all of our other campuses, those online. Today, if you've been around, you know we're wrapping up, closing out our series, All In, that we've been in this summer. And as I was thinking about just the series, what it means to be all in, I had just gotten back from visiting this week all of our leaders and students at CIY Move. And you want to talk about being all in, okay? Think about the leaders, the volunteers, the difference makers who take a week off work and go away with hundreds of kids, leading groups, staying up late. Those are some all-in people. And I think it's worth celebrating. We're going to throw up on the screen here a picture from CIY Mix and Move. Over the last few weeks, we've taken 497 students and leaders to camp. Isn't that awesome? Like, I know some of you are like, I'm trying to find my baby up there. This is intentionally dense, okay? I want you to see something. There is a hunger in this generation. They are eager and they are excited. Parents, listen to me. If you have teens, get them plugged into this because something big is happening in this generation, and I don't want your kids to miss out on it because it's going to change their lives, okay? Every year, as a part of CIY Move, a group of us go out to help run a game on Extended Rec Day. It's called Slip and Slide Kickball. Here's a picture just of the setup, okay? We put out the tarps and the plastic and the pools, and we unleash like fierce competition. Here are the refs from this year. It's all of the campus pastors and then a few other volunteers and some other staff. People ask me often, like, hey, what, you guys preach on Sunday or you do stuff on Sunday? What do you do the rest of the week? What do pastors do the rest of the week? There you go. That's it. All right, we just do slip and slide kickball. I love this day because when the action starts, the kids show up and they're like all in. They are excited. Their faces are painted. They have uniforms. They put together chants. Like I love. It's so much fun to be a part of it because the kids go all out. My favorite memory from slip and slide kickball. I've been serving doing this kickball thing for a long time. It's like 7 years ago. Okay. 2 teams were fighting for the championship. There was one run between the 2 teams. Next run is going to end up winning the game. And I'll never forget, Rashid walks up to kick the ball, okay? Rashid is every bit of like 230, football player, big dude. He walks up, they roll the ball, and he just takes it, he kicks the seams off of that thing. It goes way into outfield, and Rashid starts taking off. Nothing better than watching like a 230-pound dude try to stop going into first place when it is slip and slide. He kind of slips and slides his way into first place, gets up, goes to second base, gets up, goes to third base. On his way to third base, they've now got the ball from the outfield, and they're throwing it back into the infield. And while he's approaching third base, Kristen, who is a resident on our staff team, she's about 120 pounds soaking wet, okay? She steps between third plate and home base, like right in front of home base, and she's in. They get the ball to Kristen as Rashid comes around third base. He is heading towards home, and then I'm so glad we got this on camera. You watch this scene right here play out. Check it out. See if you can see Kristen behind Rashid, okay? Did you see her? I'm actually not sure you saw her. Let's replay it. Maybe, Nick, can we just go full screen with it? I think this is worth seeing full screen. Look at it. There she is. Y'all, Kristen was all in, all right? She was a bit sore the next day. Some of you are thinking, like, you do that to our kids? That's actually not supposed to happen. That's against the rules. He was tagged out. The next day, she was a little bit sore, but nothing was going to take her out of that spot where she could win it all, right? She put it all on the line. Don't worry, no injuries took place. They got up, they shook hands. Kristen's team won. So there you go. Okay, it was worth it. We all know this, but when you decide to go all in on something, it means hard work. It means sacrifice. My oldest, he's 15 going into high school, and he has decided he wants to play high school football. And so this has been a summer unlike maybe what he thought it would be, where instead of having free time every day, he is training every 3 days, morning, afternoon, and night. He is working his tail off, and he is sore. I saw him the other day, and it was right after training. I went over, I gave him a pat on the back, telling him how proud I was of him. Little did I know that pat on the back was just going to make him cry. He's like, oh, gosh, Dad, take it easy. I'm so sore, right? But he's all in. Over the last month and some change, we've been looking at the all-in life of Paul. And if you remember correctly, we're going to go back to Acts chapter 9. Okay, Paul, he's this dude that did not like Jesus or the Jesus movement. He was the one going around killing Christians, trying to stop the Jesus momentum. And Paul had power and authority and wealth and privilege, and he was using all of that to slow down the followers of Jesus who were all in. But then Jesus appears to Paul. He knocks him off his donkey, blinds him, and he speaks directly to him. Paul was trying to destroy the church no matter what it took, and in a single moment, the fiercest enemy of the church becomes its most compassionate and passionate messenger. And this is wild stuff because Paul, as we've learned, right, he was trying to destroy the very movement that Jesus died to build. And what does Jesus do? He doesn't strike him down. No, he loves him and he forgives him and he changes him. And Paul, he never looked back. He found a love worth living for and dying for, and he gave everything he had to follow Jesus. From that moment on, his life was marked by mission. He was all in. After planning the church in Galatia, he writes these words, okay? He says, I have been crucified with Christ. That's a pretty major change. I've been crucified with Christ, and no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. Can you get more all in than those words? Can you get more all in than that? He says, the life I live now, I live in the body, I live it by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself up for me. You can't get more all in than that. His encounter with Jesus, it didn't just inspire him to be a better person, it redefined his entire life's purpose. But it's a calling and a mission that would be anything but easy. It would be anything but simple. And I wonder if sometimes when we're reading the pages of Scripture, how much we really understand all that Paul gave up when he went all in. Like we read its words on paper, and so I wonder if sometimes, just because we can't see it, we don't interact with it, we didn't experience it firsthand, if we really truly get it, we forget how much he went through. We tend to downplay or ignore or claim ignorance to the suffering that Paul endured for his faith. Remember, he went from persecutor to proclaimer. And with that, went from inflicting pain to stop the Jesus movement to enduring pain for Jesus' sake. From tearing down the church to building it, even though it took every single breath that he had. And it's a wild ride with Paul because you see in his letters, you see like this incredible joy and peace. And yet you see hardship and persecution and suffering. It's Paul who speaks of the unshakable joy that he has, and yet he walks with a limp. He speaks of the peace that surpasses understanding while he is sitting in a prison cell. He declares that of all people, he has found the secret to contentment, even if it means being starved or in chains. He tells us to rejoice always, and yet he has been beaten and shipwrecked and left for dead. He's planted churches, he's raised up leaders, he's preached to kings, and yet he has been chased out of cities and abandoned by his friends. He is overflowing with gratitude, and yet he has nothing to his name. And if you follow the life of Paul long enough, you'll see it. Something really important in his life, because according to his teaching, according to his path, According to the all-in ways that he is following Jesus, suffering for his faith, being persecuted, it's just part of the job description. Something about his encounter with Jesus changed him. It moved him to the place where when things got harder, he just leaned in all the more. When things got more difficult, he didn't back off, he pressed forward. The more he suffered, the more resilient he became. And when you examine the markers of Paul's all-in life with Christ, or really, if you look at any of the early followers of Jesus, you can't help but come to terms with the fact that to be all in means that anyone who is walking with Jesus will experience some level of discomfort or opposition or persecution or suffering because of their faith. Stephen in Acts, he died for his faith. He was the first Christian martyr. Peter and John, they were publicly beaten and imprisoned for preaching about Jesus. Priscilla is honored in church history as one who faced great opposition in her life for the gospel. The early church didn't just believe the gospel of Jesus, they were gripped by it. It wasn't a theory, it was their heartbeat. They were so changed by Jesus and they wanted everyone else to know it, no matter what it would cost them. They lived it, they breathed it, and they gave everything for it. And if anyone understands suffering for the sake of love, do you know who it was? Church answer. We're getting there. Come on, church answer. Jesus is the church answer. We're going to try it one more time. You guys got this, okay? Anytime someone says church answer, it's always Jesus. If anyone understands suffering for the sake of love, it is, hey, there we go. And he showed us what it really looks like to be all in, where even Jesus himself, he lived the sinless, perfect life, and yet he still gave everything. Luke 9, Jesus says this. He says, the Son of Man must what? Suffer. Suffer. Suffering's part of the job description. The Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and he must be killed, on the third day be raised from the dead. Jesus' kingdom, it's not one of power and rule, but it's one of serving. It's backwards and it's confusing to those who don't understand it. And ultimately, it's through his suffering that he makes a way for us to enter into life to the full. But then Jesus continues and he says, hey, anyone who's going to follow me, your life's going to be marked by this as well. The same is going to be true of you. And he says this, whoever wants to be my disciple, you must deny yourself, take up your cross daily and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but anyone who loses their life for me will save it. Jesus connects his suffering directly to our calling. To follow him, it's not a call to comfort. I mean, so often people, I think, tend to believe that becoming a Christian means like everything's just going to kind of nicely fall into its place, right? Things will be easy, sunshines and daisies, smooth roads and blessings. Like faith is a fast pass to a pain-free life. But Jesus did not promise that. Now, what do you say? He said, take up your cross, the tool of death, daily, and follow me. That's not language of convenience. It's language of sacrifice, of self-denial, of costly obedience. To follow Jesus is to choose the harder path, the one that will stretch you, the one that will change you, the one that will enter you into the difficult work of transformation. And it's the one that will be accompanied by some level of Christian suffering. But here's the paradox in it all. What we gain in our suffering for Jesus is infinitely greater than what we give up. It's hard to explain, and the cost may be high, but it is nothing compared with the reward of truly knowing him. I get it, like on the outside, suffering at any level seems crazy, but in Christian suffering, the resurrection of Jesus brings strength in our weakness. Paul did not follow Jesus to find an easier life. He followed Jesus because he found a love that changed him for the better. And that love, it led him not towards comfort, but instead to compassion and to calling and to commissioning, regardless of the discomfort that may accompany it. Church, when we're considering what it means to be all in, When we're asking ourselves, are we all in? You need to also ask yourself the question, have you had to endure or are you willing to endure any kind of suffering for the sake of Jesus Christ? Allow that question to challenge you a little bit, to lead you to give an honest look at your whole life and ask the question, like, am I really all in? That brings us to our passage in 2 Corinthians that we read just a little bit ago. I want you to get what's happening here. So I'm going to offer you first a little bit of context, a little bit of background, okay? So bear with me. Paul here, he's writing to the church in Corinth, and it's a church that mind you, he has a very complicated relationship with. We see in Acts 18 that Paul first arrives in Corinth. He had just left Athens, and now he enters one of the most strategic and spiritually dark cities in the entire Roman world. We're going to put up a map of Corinth here, okay? Corinth, it was a booming and progressive city. It was young and diverse, incredibly wealthy, and it sat on this narrow land bridge here. We'll zoom in on that so you can see it a little bit closer. And what would happen is this land bridge connected the Aegean Sea to the Ionian Sea, and to avoid having to take a ship all the way around down through the southern tip of Greece, ships would either pull up here and unload their cargo and carry it across to another ship, or if the ship was small enough, what they would do is they would just drag the ship on a road that connected these two ports. There's an actual canal that's been dug out now, you can see here. But this is located, Corinth is located dab smack in the middle of this strategic crossing. It was a big city. And the location, it made it a center of trade and wealth, but also a place of like crazy spiritual confusion and rampant immorality. There was a temple to Aphrodite that sat atop the city that kind of looked down on the rest of it, a place known for temple prostitution. Hundreds of prostitutes would be there. The city had a bad rap for sexual access that puts places like Vegas to shame. Corinth was the kind of place where people did whatever they wanted. They lived for comfort, for wealth, for pleasure. They were marked by indulgence. Success, how was it measured? Check this out. It was measured in status, in appearance, in personal gain, and how much you could accumulate. Does that sound familiar to anybody? There's a lot of similarities between Corinth and modern day America. Was Corinth more jacked up than we are? Maybe. Gosh, I sure hope so. Maybe not. But what I do know is true of us, that's also true of Corinth, is it was not forgotten by God. No, those people, immoral, indulgent, spiritually lost, they were loved by God. And so God sent Paul to confront their brokenness and call them to a new way. In Acts 18, it gives us this brief overview of Paul's visit to Corinth. He stayed there 18 months. He preached the gospel not without opposition, but he stayed steady, showing people a new way to live, a life marked not by self-indulgence, but rather by the transformational power of Jesus Christ. And the truth of Jesus in Corinth, because of Paul's willingness to take it there and push against the opposition, the truth of Jesus starts to take root and lives start to change in that place. And after planting the church, Paul, he moves on to this is what Paul does. He plants a church and he moves on. He plants a church, he moves on. He moves on to the next place where he begins receiving some reports that things aren't going well back in Corinth. The church is now fractured. There's division. There's spiritual pride. There's moral compromise. And there's justification to allow the old ways of life to creep back in. And so Paul writes to that church in Corinth, and that's our book of 1 Corinthians. And he writes to address the issues and call them back to faithfulness in the ways of Jesus. But the problem here is that the problems didn't go away. And so somewhere between the book of 1 Corinthians and the book of 2 Corinthians, Paul makes another visit to Corinth. How do we know that? Well, he talks about it in the book of 2 Corinthians. How did it go? Well, according to 2 Corinthians, it didn't go well. He refers to it as the painful visit. Like an awkward family dinner. Ever been at a family dinner where like the whole family gets together, they're rarely there, and you're like having a good old time. Everyone's like passing the mashed potatoes and the green beans, but then all of a sudden, Uncle Bill, it's always Uncle Bill, decides to bring up politics. You know what I mean? I'm like, come on, Uncle Bill, chill out. And all of a sudden, like this conversation breaks out and tension gets real, and people leave that dinner more frustrated than together. You know what I'm talking about? You get in the car with your spouse, you're like, well, that was painful. That's what this visit was like for Paul, right? He left on a bad note. There was a rift between Paul and the church. And it's in 2 Corinthians that Paul is addressing some of the friction between the Corinthians and himself. The people in Corinth, they've become a little bit ashamed of Paul. They've rejected him. Paul, he's poor. He's homeless. He's not very impressive. and he is marked by his persecution and suffering. He carried himself with humility instead of flash. And in a city that was known for power and wealth and eloquence, how did Paul look? Well, he looked weak. There wasn't a lot fancy about him. And so the church there, they start to give their attention to the more impressive and eloquent and wealthy Christian leaders, the one who Paul would sarcastically refer to as the super apostles. It's like when your kids come home from school and you tell them they should do something and they're like, well, but my friend at school said this. Like, oh yeah, that kid's your dad, right? And these words that we're about to read, like they're meant to be deeply corrective, but also deeply pastoral. Showing the church in Corinth and all of those who would one day follow Jesus, like us, what it means to be a follower of him. It doesn't mean to chase strength, but it means to embrace weakness so that God's power can shine through us. See what Paul is doing in these verses we're about to read. He's making it clear that the job of a Christian is not to be impressive, but instead just to point to the one who is impressive, and his name is Jesus. And so he uses this metaphor that's very powerful and very pointed. And he says this in 2 Corinthians chapter 4. He says, but we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. Let me explain this to you, okay? This statement, it would have been a little bit shocking to the people in Corinth. Like Paul is trying to humble them a little bit. Why is it shocking? Well, we know, like Corinth was known for wealth and luxury, eloquence, self-promotion, public image mattered. Honor was everything, and that had made its way into the church as well. The people, they were drawn to the leaders who looked the part, who carried flash and influence. And when Paul shows up, all beaten up, poor, unimpressive, they start to reject him. And so what he's doing here is he's showing them the upside down perspective of Jesus by reminding them that they are very, very ordinary, just like a clay pot. He's intentionally using an image that would have been familiar, clearly conveying something that is ordinary, common, fragile, and lacking in status. I have a clay pot right here. Bought it at Home Depot. $2. You know what I mean? They had hundreds of these. They are cheap, super cheap, common even, especially in the first century. All right, clay jars, they would be used for everything. They would carry your water, but they would also carry your waste. They would carry your prized possession. They would also carry your trash. They themselves did not carry any kind of significant value. The value was only found in what it held. Clay jar, it's just the price of ordinary dirt. The most ordinary, unimpressive object in your home. It's cheap, it's disposable. People in the first century, they would not have displayed a clay jar on their mantle. My wife would because retro is in, okay? But they would not. In a city obsessed with looking impressive, what Paul says is we are just jars of clay, ordinary, fragile, and very, very breakable. Nothing fancy about us. And in this moment, Paul, he's not trying to diminish the value of human life to the church in Corinth. There are plenty of places in Paul's writings where he talks about the beauty of humanity, where he calls us the masterpiece of God's creation. But he is trying to get them to realize something. The pot is not what's impressive. What's impressive is what's on the inside. What makes us valuable isn't how we look, it's in what we carry. And we carry the treasure of God's power and presence within us. It's not about polish or performance, but instead about a God who sustains us through our weakness. Paul wants the church to see that the jar is ultimately, it is frail and it is weak. It chips, it breaks, it leaks. But our cracks and our suffering, our humility, they aren't liabilities. They're the very thing that reveals God's strength and his love and his faithfulness. And he goes on to show them what he means in verses 8 through 10. He says this, he says, we are hard pressed on every side, but we are not crushed. We're perplexed, but not in despair. We are persecuted, but not abandoned. We are struck down, but we are not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, the Jesus who hung on a cross for us, so that the life of Jesus, the resurrection, may be also revealed in our body. Here's the beauty of the metaphor. Paul's reminding the readers there's not a lot fancy about walking with Jesus. His ways are backwards. They are upside down. It is the paradox of the cross, where victory looks like sacrifice, where the first shall be last and the last shall be first. To follow Jesus means to serve when it's inconvenient, to hold tight to and pursue God's character in our lives, to forgive the unforgivable, to swim upstream against the values of this world because you desire to see the values and the love of Jesus amplified in it. When we live like that, we are going to experience some kind of resistance, some level of suffering, some hardship, some misunderstanding, and maybe even rejection. But Paul tells us we're also going to experience contentment and peace and joy and strength and purpose and real blessing that's not measured by comfort, but instead by closeness with Christ. That's why Paul in Romans, he says this, he says, but we will glory in our suffering. It sounds crazy, doesn't it? We will glory in our suffering because we know that suffering produces perseverance and perseverance produces character and character produces hope. We will glory in it. Hope does not put us to shame because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. Paul is helping the believers to understand that suffering isn't a sign that God has abandoned them. Instead, it is a space where God is most present and active, forming their hearts, producing perseverance, and rooting them deeper into hope. That's why in verses 8 through 10, he leads with the word we. Don't miss the importance of the word, like, we're glad you went through that, Paul. And no. We have this treasure in us, and that means that this is a we statement. If you are a follower of Jesus, then there is an assumption that this is going to be true of you. We're hard-pressed on every side, but we are not crushed. We are perplexed, but we are not in despair. We are persecuted, but we are not abandoned. We are struck down, but we are not destroyed. And this, my friends, this is the tension of what it looks like to be all in. We're fragile clay jars, breakable, yet filled with something eternal. And when we break, we bleed, but we are not done. We are not discarded. We are not forgotten. And Paul never, in any of his writings, sugarcoats the Christian experience. If we're to be honest about what it means to be all in, then we will not cover up the gritty and sometimes harsh realities of the implications. These verses, Paul's showing them that, hey, to be all in with Jesus means that you more than likely will experience some kind of persecution or suffering in this life for your faith. Years ago, I had an opportunity to go on a trip to India to work with some ministry partners there, and it was very eye-opening for me because I got to see a new depth and intensity of persecution that I had not experienced. We flew in, we landed, we went to church that Sunday, and the church was vibrant and alive and loud and singing, but at the same time, they had people at the door keeping watch in case somebody were to attack them again. Or when we'd be out and about, Christians would somehow find each other and they'd kind of run off into hiding around a corner. But, hey, are you a Christian too? I am too. And they would have this excitement and embrace, and they would find this joy in one another. Most of the places we went, we had armed guards with us, just showing you kind of the severity of the situation. We went to a hospital. The armed guards had to stay outside because you weren't allowed to bring weapons into the hospital. And we go into the hospital, and our host, this hospital was built by the church, by the mission that we were there supporting and helping. The host goes into the hospital. You have all these people who are bruised and beaten and broken and sad. And he says, I just want to let everybody know that this hospital exists because Jesus Christ is alive, and he has saved me, and he has healed me, and he can heal you too now, physically or spiritually. This exists only because Jesus is alive. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, the armed guards are outside. You want to keep it down a little bit? Because I'd never experienced anything like that before. And sometimes when we think about Christian persecution and Christian suffering, I wonder if like we give ourselves an excuse that like we have freedom so we can live out our faith. I read my Bible at Starbucks, woo. But have you really had to experience any kind of painful suffering because of your faith? Because in our context, it might not look as severe as it does for our brothers and sisters in India. But you know what it might look like? It might look like your family keeping you at arm's distance because you take your faith so seriously. It might look like you having to resign from your job because that job forces you to compromise your integrity. It might mean that you're labeled as intolerant because you're holding to biblical convictions. It might mean that you lose the promotion or get fired because you won't cheat or cut corners. Your public faith, it might make you the target of mockery at school or online. Friends might abandon you or turn on you because your faith doesn't align with their beliefs. You may feel the pain of being spiritually alone in your house, and you're just praying that your spouse would understand because instead of encouraging your faith, they only put it down. The list could go on and on about the ways that because Jesus is alive in us and we want to show it to the world, that we will experience hardship. It could be so much more severe. But the beauty of the Christian story is that when life hits us with its worst, the treasures inside of us are what get revealed. And it's because of that treasure that exists that when we get all cracked up, it demonstrates to the world around us the sustaining power of God. It's when we're all in that even if it means suffering, and sometimes especially when it means suffering, the world can better see the treasure that we carry, the power of Christ who raises the dead and brings life to the full. Have you ever heard of kintsugi before? There's a kintsugi vase here. This is a Japanese art form that takes broken pottery and puts it back together, not by hiding the cracks, but by filling them with gold. And it goes from broken to repaired, and the repairs, they actually become a part of the story. The break isn't erased, instead it's highlighted. It creates beauty, it's redeemed. And the end result is a pot that's actually more valuable and more beautiful because of its brokenness, not in spite of it. That's what Paul is saying God does with us. When we go all in, even if it means cracks and fractures, being broken in the process, experiencing suffering for our faith, he holds us together with his grace. He fills the cracks with his strength. Our lives become a testimony, not in our perfection or fancy facade, but we become a power. We become a testimony of his power and his glory shining through our weakness. After all, friends, wealth is going to come and go. Health will come and go. Your job title can and will change. Followers can disappear. You may have all of the status 1 minute, but then you know what? The Kiss Cam at the Coldplay concert will find you and turn your life upside down. You may feel secure today and blindsided tomorrow 1 minute. You may be celebrated and the next forgotten. Everything external is fragile, temporary, and breakable. But being all in with Jesus means we don't cling to comfort. We don't conform to culture. We don't avoid hardship. Instead, we choose the narrow path of love. We speak truth even when it costs us something. And we embrace obedience even when it's in the face of opposition. Why? Because we know that the cracks of life surrendered to Jesus, they don't lead to brokenness. They don't define us. But instead, they point to the treasure within that sustains us and holds us and brings us life to the full, even in the midst of it. Paul continues here by telling us that is the truth. He continues this flourish by connecting the dots. We're not crushed, we're not broken. Why? Why aren't we broken? Because we carry around in us the body, the death of Jesus, so the life of Jesus may also be revealed through us. And it says this, it says, for we who are alive are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake. Our life is not about us, it's about picking up the cross so that his life may also be revealed in our mortal body. So then, death is at work, the wages of sin are real, but life is at work in you. Paul doesn't just know the ways of Jesus. He's not just teaching theology. He is living it out. And to be all in with Jesus means his ways should be undeniably visible in our life. And the more life we give to Jesus, the more he creates something beautiful through the cracks. Embracing our cross, picking up our cross and following him, it is part of the deal. It's part of the commission that God gives us. And along the way, any suffering that we experience because we follow Jesus, it's not pointless pain. It's fertile ground. It reveals God's love and his goodness and his true blessing as he sustains us through it all. Every act of faithful service, every hard conversation, every tough decision, every time you choose faith when it costs you, that may represent a small death, a moment to pick up your cross, but it also highlights and reveals the death of Jesus so that the resurrected life may be revealed through you. Paul's ministry, as we've seen through this series, it's a ministry of action, of life lived, of cracks endured. Through it all, displaying not brokenness, but where real life is found. He sees suffering not as a detour, but as a pathway through which the resurrection life to the full, life with purpose, life with meaning, a life that transforms others is truly found and shared. The question, friends, is not will it be hard? It will be hard. Anything good has opposition. Jesus has opposition. Satan is roaming and looking, ready to kill and destroy. The question is not, will it be hard? The question is, will you be in anyway? Because when you go all in with Jesus, you may be broken, but you'll never be crushed. You may experience suffering, but your suffering will never lead to despair. You may feel weak, but you'll never be abandoned. It's the invitation to live like Jesus, to walk like Jesus, to love like Jesus, to trust that Jesus will hold you together when your faithfulness, not if, when your faithfulness costs you something. And not only will he hold you together, he will make you stronger. And in the process, he will reveal to the world around you the treasure within. Paul says, when I am weak, he is strong. When I look frail, he holds me together. We boast in our weakness because it points to the strength and the beauty of Jesus Christ. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4 here, the chapter closes out with these words. I think it's fitting just to let these words be our prayer today as we think about being people who are all in. If you're going to be all in, it's going to cost you something. Satan is alive, and he is pushing against the ways of Jesus. And we push through that. In our weakness, the Lord and the Lord only is who makes us strong. And he amplifies and emboldens the hope that we have in him. And the people around us are like, what are you doing? Why are you sacrificing? Why are you going through this pain? Because we have a treasure within us that outlasts this world. It's worth it. It's God's glory shining through us. So I'm going to read these verses from 2 Corinthians chapter 4, and I just invite you, close your eyes, hear these words, and make them your prayer. Therefore, God, we don't lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs every single one of them. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but praise be to God, what is unseen is eternal. Thank you, Jesus. We are all in with you. Lead us, God. When opposition comes, that we would find hope, that you would sustain us, and that we remember it is just an opportunity for the treasure of God's goodness to shine through us, Jesus. We love you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.